Hi, my name's Ronan, and I guess the day everything unraveled was the day he kicked me out. My stepfather looked me dead in the eyes and said, "This house has no room for failures." Just like that. No job, no money, no family, not even a goodbye. Just snow falling. And me, standing there with a busted suitcase and a car older than my childhood. But when I turned the key, the GPS lit up. One saved address. It didn't say where, just one word: home. I followed it. And at the end of that road, someone was already waiting. Someone I thought was dead. But that wasn't the twist. The real betrayal was still hiding inside the house I was raised to trust. The first thing I remember is the sound. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even angry. Just the clean, final click of a door locking behind me, and the way it echoed through the snow. Wade didn't yell. He never had to. He just stood there in the doorway, face half lit by the warm light from the living room, and said, "This house has no room for failures." That was it. No argument, no second chance. Just his voice cutting through the storm. I opened my mouth to speak, to tell him it was just one bad day, that I'd find another job, that it wasn't like I'd lost a limb. But the door shut before my words even formed. The porch light blinked twice, like it was thinking about staying on for me. Then went out. Through the curtain, I saw my mother's shadow. She didn't move, didn't open the door. That silence hurt worse than anything he could have said. For a second, I just stood there, my breath fogging in front of me, snow piling up on my jacket. I could still feel the warmth from inside that house, the smell of stew, the sound of the TV, the life that used to be mine. And now it wasn't. I wanted to knock. God, I wanted to. But the thing about being kicked out isn't just losing a roof. It's realizing the people inside stopped seeing you as worth letting in. I walked down the driveway, the snow crunching under my boots. My truck was gone, sold 2 months ago to help cover my mom's medical bill after Wade forgot to submit the insurance form. All I had left was a wallet that felt thinner than my pride. I checked it under the streetlight, $2,500. My savings, my restart fund, or maybe my goodbye. I laughed, but it came out wrong, like a cough trying to hide a cry. The wind picked up, biting at my neck. A man should have somewhere to go when his own house turns its back. I didn't, not really. There was one place still open, J&B Used Cars, a mile down the road. I'd passed it every day on my way to work, never thinking I'd end up walking there after dark, snow in my hair, job gone, name erased. The bell above the office door rang when I pushed it open. The man inside didn't even look up from his phone. Cash or card? Cash, I said. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. He pointed out the window toward a row of cars coated in snow. That blue sedan still runs, mostly. I signed the paper, handed him the cash, and watched him pocket it without counting. He tossed me the keys. "Good luck, buddy." Luck. Right. The car's door creaked like it hadn't been opened in a year. The seat smelled of old cigarettes and something sweet. Maybe someone's cheap cologne. I sat there for a while, hands on the steering wheel, the cold seeping through my jeans. The heater didn't work. Of course it didn't. My breath turned the windshield milky white, so I wiped a circle clear with my sleeve. The dashboard blinked to life, a tired orange glow. Then I saw it. The GPS. It booted up slow, the screen flickering, and one saved address appeared. Just one. Home. That word hit harder than Wade's voice. Funny, I thought. The car knows where home is. I sure don't. I let out a shaky breath, staring at that single word. Whoever owned this car before me had saved one destination, one place they thought of as home. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was a trap. The snow outside thickened, swallowing the sound of everything. I tapped the GPS once, and it zoomed in. The route stretched north, past the city, toward the mountains. I hesitated, thumb hovering above the button. If I pressed it, I was choosing to chase someone else's home. If I didn't, I'd just sit there, in a parking lot full of ghosts, in a car that didn't even know me. I thought of Wade's face, of my mother's shadow behind that curtain, and I pressed navigate. The mechanical voice came alive, gentle but cold. Turn right in 200 feet. Snowflakes swirled around the headlights like static on an old TV. I gripped the wheel, shifted into drive, and rolled onto the road. If the road leads nowhere, I whispered. At least it's not back there. The car hummed low, the tires hissing against the ice. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Eyes red, jaw set. A man trying too hard not to look broken. Half a mile out, I looked in the rearview mirror. The lights from the Kells house were fading into the storm, soft and golden, until they disappeared completely. The screen glowed soft blue in the dark, whispering one word. Home. I followed the route, hands stiff on the wheel, letting the voice on the GPS drag me deeper into nowhere. The snow hadn't stopped. If anything, it had grown meaner, clawing sideways across the road like it was trying to push me back. But the blue glow from the screen didn't flinch. The road narrowed the farther I went. Asphalt gave way to gravel, then to patches of frozen mud, then to nothing at all. The map still said to keep going. Continue for 1 mile. It repeated, mechanical and calm, as if the car wasn't groaning under the weight of winter and regret. No signs, no fences, no houses, just empty land, and the sound of my tires crunching through frost. The radio gave out 2 miles back. First static, then silence. I tried turning it off and back on, like that would fix whatever was broken, but nothing came back. Just the hollow crackle of dead air. I was about to give up. I was seconds from turning around and pretending the whole thing hadn't happened when I saw it. A flicker. Just off the shoulder of the road. A weak, irregular light, dancing like someone had left a candle burning in the wind. I slowed the car. Up ahead was what looked like a gas station, if you could still call it that. The windows were smashed out, the roof sagging, and one of the old pumps was toppled over like it had been hit by something big. Nothing else was around for miles, but there, by the side of the building, sat a fire, real flames, alive and orange, fighting the snow. And next to it, a man. He sat on a milk crate, motionless, arms resting on his knees like he'd been waiting for hours. He wore a long coat, heavy boots, and a wool cap pulled down low, shadowing his face. I pulled the car to a stop about 30 feet away and killed the engine. The silence was instant and total. I stepped out. The snow hit like needles this time, sharp, relentless. It filled the collar of my coat, soaked into my jeans, but I kept walking. The man didn't move. I got within 10 feet before he spoke, and when he did, his voice was smooth and strange. You finally made it. I froze. What? He didn't turn his head, just pointed, not at me, but at my car, at the passenger seat. You were expecting me? I asked, already backing up a step. Who are you? Still no answer, still no movement, just his hand, steady as a statue, pointing at my car. I turned, and there it was, an envelope, cream-colored, folded in half, sitting perfectly upright on the passenger seat. I knew it hadn't been there before. I would have seen it when I was driving. or when I turned the heat up one last time. But now it looked like it belonged there, like it had been waiting. I walked back slowly, opened the door, and picked it up. There was no stamp, no seal, no name on the front. Inside was a single piece of paper, handwritten, in ink that had started to smudge. 3 short lines. Noah Garrison. Find him. He knows what they took from you. I read it once. Then again. My chest tightened. Noah Garrison. That name hadn't crossed my lips in years. My half-brother, gone without a trace 7 years ago after the funeral. No goodbye, no calls, just gone. The last time I saw him, we stood by Dad's grave. He leaned close and whispered to me like he was saying a prayer. Wade's a thief of souls, Ronan. Don't trust him. I thought he'd finally cracked. Turns out he might have been the only one who saw clearly. I looked back toward the fire. The man was gone. Not walking away, not hiding, just gone. The crate was empty. The flames were dying down, sinking into ash. And his footprints? Nothing. No indentations, no trail in the snow, not even from when I first saw him. The only thing left was the note in my hand. And the chill that crept through my spine wasn't just from the cold. I stood there for a while, letting the wind whip around me, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. But some things don't make sense. Some things just happen. Maybe that's what home means. Not comfort, not safety, just something calling to you, whether you understand it or not. I got back in the car, the door creaking shut behind me. The letter sat on the dash like it weighed 100 pounds. I didn't know what they'd taken from me, but I knew one thing for damn sure. I wasn't going back to being the guy who never asked. I started the engine again, gripping the note until it wrinkled. For the first time in years, I had somewhere to go. The tires crunched over packed snow as I turned onto the street I swore I'd never see again. The same cracked sidewalk, same trimmed hedges, the same house, neat, still, and cold as ever. From the outside, nothing had changed, not even the wreath on the front door. A wreath in a blizzard. Wade always did love appearances. I pulled the blue sedan to the curb. Didn't bother turning the engine off yet. Just sat there with the letter still in my lap. Folded and refolded so many times it was soft as fabric now. The sky was turning a quiet gray. Snow had stopped, but the air held that heavy silence Wyoming mornings carry after a storm. I used to like that stillness. Not anymore. My key still fit the front gate. That surprised me. I walked slowly, boots sinking into slush, up the same stone path I helped lay down when I was 16. Wade took credit for it at a block party once, told everyone he laid it by hand. I remember thinking, let him have it. It's just stones. I paused at the porch. The railing on the right was the one I fixed last summer. Wade never thanked me, just ran his hand over it once and said, "You finally learned how to use a level." The memory stung harder now. A curtain moved. Second window from the left. Lydia, my mother. She stood behind the glass like a ghost, watching but not waving, not opening the door. I knew she saw me. I could feel it. She didn't think I'd come back, I muttered. The door wasn't locked. I stepped in. Warmth wrapped around me, but it felt like borrowed heat. Not something meant for me. The floor creaked the same way it always did near the entryway, familiar and unwelcome. Wade was in the kitchen, seated at the table like he owned the morning. Newspaper open. Coffee steaming in front of him. He didn't even flinch when I walked in. "Came to collect what's yours?" he asked, voice flat, calm. There's nothing left for you here. I took the letter from my pocket and laid it on the table, just far enough from his mug to force him to look up. Then why is my brother's name still haunting your mail? He didn't blink, just smiled, that slow, knowing smile that always made me want to break something. You mean Noah? He said. He ran off years ago. Don't tell me you're chasing ghosts now. I glanced past him. A new photo on the wall. Big, glossy, clearly printed at one of those chain stores. Wade, Lydia, Hannah. Me? Not there. You can erase a person from a frame, but not from blood. I walked to the counter. Something caught my eye. A folder. Beige, worn at the corners, labeled in red ink. Noah Estate Holdings. That name again. I picked it up, flipped it open. Wade's chair scraped as he stood. That's not yours. It's Noah's, I said, which means it's also mine. He grabbed my wrist. Firm. Too firm. I yanked away before the anger could take full shape in my hands. You said he was gone, I said, stepping back. Why are you still handling his estate? Because I own it now. Those words landed like bricks. I scanned the folder, scanned faster, then stopped. A copy of our father's will. Handwriting changed. Edits obvious if you knew what you were looking for. The original line, beneficiaries Noah Garrison and Ronan Kells, was crossed out in ink. In its place, executors Wade Garrison and Lydia Kells. I looked up. Wade was watching me, arms folded, proud, unapologetic. I turned toward my mother. She hadn't moved from the doorway. Tears streaked her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. You watched him steal from your sons, I said quietly, and you said nothing. She covered her mouth with her hand and sobbed, but still, not a word. I folded the will, placed it in my coat pocket, and looked Wade in the eye. If Noah's alive, I'll find him, I said. If he's not, I'll bury the truth myself. I walked to the door. Didn't slam it this time. Didn't need to. I closed it gently, fingers on the brass knob until the latch clicked. He shut the door softly this time. The silence was his. He took my father's name, my brother's home, and my mother's voice. But not mine. Not anymore. I drove west as the sky faded from gray to the color of old ash. The snowbanks melted slightly along the highway's edge, exposing stretches of gravel like bones under skin. The silence in the car was heavier than the wind outside, but I welcomed it. It gave my mind room to turn over the questions still hanging in the air, like what else Wade had stolen besides ink and inheritance. 2 days had passed since I walked out of that house. 2 days of poring over old repair invoices, backlogged business licenses, and archived emails from my time at the garage. It wasn't much, most of it stale, broken links, or outdated contact numbers. But buried in a digital graveyard of old files, I found it. A dissolved LLC out of Idaho Falls. K&G Repairs, co-owners, Noah Garrison, and someone named Eric Kent. The business was terminated 8 years ago, but that name, Noah's, was enough. I didn't know if I was chasing my brother or chasing the man I used to be, but the road felt like the only honest thing left under my feet. The miles blurred together. Towns came and went. Billboards advertising muffler discounts and Christian radio stations flickered by. Somewhere near Rock Springs, I stopped to fill up the tank and grab a sandwich. The girl behind the counter didn't look up once. Back in the car, I opened my glove box, pulled out an old flash drive I'd kept for years. I wasn't even sure it still worked, but it did. I plugged it into the USB port, and my stereo crackled, then played a voicemail from years ago. Noah's voice. Fuzzy. wind in the background. He was laughing about something. Probably something dumb, I said. Look, Ronan, if you're going to keep doing things the hard way, at least don't pretend you like it. That's just sad. Click. End of message. I stared ahead. My hands clenched the wheel tighter than they needed to. I remembered that call. We'd fought the week before. I forgot what about. Maybe he didn't. Maybe that's why he disappeared. I reached Idaho Falls just before dusk. A neon vacancy sign flickered above a roadside motel, the kind with warped siding and numbers peeling off the doors. I parked under the dim lot lights and walked into the office. The clerk was a woman in her 60s, wrapped in a wool shawl. She looked up from a crossword puzzle and studied my face the way only older folks do, like she wasn't seeing just me, but 100 people before me, trying to figure out who I reminded her of. "You from around here?" she asked. "No," I said. "Looking for someone. Maybe you've heard the name, Noah Garrison." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "That boy fixed my porch years ago," she said. "Didn't ask for a dime, just showed up with a box of tools and a smile like he knew me." That sounded like Noah. "He left something behind," she added, reaching into the drawer beneath the desk. She handed me a keychain, brass, dented along one edge. The tag read, "K&G Repairs." I turned it over. There, faint but still legible, was an address etched into the back, by the river, outside of town. "He never came back for it," she said. "Guess it's yours now." I thanked her, booked a room, then drove out again with the keychain in my palm like a compass. The road narrowed the closer I got to the water. Pines rose up like sentinels on either side. The address took me to a patch of gravel beside a half-rotted cabin, leaning slightly toward the river like it had given up standing straight. I stepped out and approached slowly. The place wasn't abandoned, not entirely. Tools lay scattered across a wooden table out front, the kind of tools Noah used to carry in his belt. Inside, dust floated through cold air, but the air didn't smell old. Someone had been here. A worn coat hung on a hook by the door. My breath caught. In the corner of the room, under a cracked window, I saw a photo torn at the edges. 2 boys, me and Noah. Summer haircuts, smiling like idiots. I lifted the coat. In the pocket, a receipt, dated 3 weeks ago. Gas station just outside Boise. "He was here," I whispered. "Recently," which meant he was still running. Or hiding. Or both. I stepped back outside, heart pounding now. Something shifted in the air. A car engine, distant but growing louder. I crouched beside the porch as the vehicle approached. Headlights flashed through the trees. Then silence. No door opened, just footsteps. One set, crunching across the snow. I peered around the corner. Nothing. But fresh tire tracks curved down the road, and boot prints, leading toward the trees, then gone, like the snow had swallowed them up. I stood there for a long time, holding the receipt, the photo, and that keychain. Each felt like part of a map someone didn't want me to follow. But I would. Maybe family isn't who stays. Maybe it's who keeps looking. The address on the tag wasn't just a place. It was a breadcrumb. And someone else was following the same trail. I eased the car back onto Highway 20, headlights stretching over the slick asphalt like a flashlight through a fogged memory. The air was colder now, but the snow had softened into slush, collecting along the median. That motel keychain from K&G Repairs dangled from the ignition, tapping the steering column with each bump. A quiet metronome keeping time with a gut I couldn't ignore. The further I got from the river cabin, the louder the silence inside the car became, Until I noticed it. A black SUV. At first, I chalked it up to paranoia. Just another vehicle heading the same direction. But after 10 miles, I changed lanes. So did it. I exited, looped back onto the highway. It followed. My pulse beat a little faster. There's a rhythm to fear. It starts as a whisper, builds like a drumline behind your ribs, and then it starts shouting over reason. I slowed down, watching the SUV in my rear view. No headlights flashing. No rush to pass. Just steady. Too steady. At the next rest stop, I pulled off, pretending to check my tires. The SUV rolled in behind, parked 2 spaces away, engine idling. I glanced into the convenience store window to use the reflection. The driver didn't move. I got back into the car, heart in my throat, and pulled out fast. Tires kicked up slush. So did his. It wasn't paranoia anymore. My hands tightened on the wheel, breath shallow. I knew how this felt, being hunted. This wasn't the kind of fear you learned overnight. This was the kind that came from childhood, when you lived with a man like Wade, and learned early how to listen for footsteps, even in your sleep. 10 more miles passed before the call came. Unknown number. I should have let it ring, but I didn't. Hello? A man's voice. Calm, sure, too calm. You shouldn't have taken that folder. My stomach turned cold. Who is this? I asked. You think you're chasing Noah, the voice said, but you're not. You're chasing a debt he never paid. The call dropped. No number, no name. Just silence on the line now. And then my GPS blinked. The old route vanished. A new one loaded, flashing red, guiding me to the edge of town. An industrial park. The address was familiar. It matched the one stamped on the back of the keychain. K&G Repairs. Someone wants me there, I muttered. Question is, why? I turned off the highway, every street darker than the last. Warehouse lights flickered like a dying pulse. By the time I pulled up, the SUV was gone, but fresh tire marks were imprinted in the slush. I stepped out slowly, scanning the lot. One overhead light buzzed above the entrance, casting long shadows across cracked pavement. The side door was ajar, as if expecting me. Inside, the place smelled like rust and old paper. Dust floated in thick beams of light from high windows. A few workbenches stood against the far wall, empty save for a set of invoices and a ledger. I picked it up. Noah's name, printed, signed. Several times, rent payments, tool orders, utility bills, but the sender? Wade Garrison Industries. I blinked, reading again. Wade, the man who called Noah a stain, a failure, had been funding his operations from the shadows, quietly, consistently. Why? I turned the next page. A photo slipped out. 3 men, Wade, Noah, and the man from the fire, the one who said, "You finally made it." They weren't strangers. They were partners. Or something worse. Suddenly, nothing I believed made sense. I leaned against the wall, breath catching in my throat. The world tilted, not with fear this time, but with confusion so deep it felt like drowning. What if Noah wasn't the victim? What if Wade wasn't just a manipulator, but a protector of something or someone? What if everything I ran from had been more complicated than I ever allowed myself to believe? I looked down at the keychain glinting under the overhead bulb. It no longer felt like a clue. It felt like a warning. Sometimes the people we hate are the only ones still keeping us alive. I shoved the folder into my coat along with the photo. Then I stepped outside into the cold night air. No SUV in sight, but I didn't need to see it to know it was still nearby. Watching. Waiting. My footfalls echoed down the pavement. The more I searched for my brother, the more I found my stepfather's fingerprints instead. I didn't go straight there. I circled the block 3 times first, headlights off, just to be sure I wasn't being followed again. By now, I knew how to feel the difference between nerves and danger. And my nerves weren't lying. Still, I needed to look him in the eye. The house looked untouched since the night I was thrown out. Fresh snow lay on the roof like a lie no one wanted to disturb. The porch light glowed faintly, and the windows were too clean, too still. I parked across the street, engine idling until I spotted movement through the kitchen window. Lydia stood there, hands clutched to her chest, face turned slightly from Wade, who paced in tight circles while barking into his phone. I couldn't hear the words, but the tension traveled across glass. I shut the engine, stepped out, and crossed the street. Every step echoed. The cold stung, but I welcomed it. Helped me stay sharp. At the door, I didn't knock. It was unlocked. Wade was the first to notice. "You should have stayed gone," he said without turning. Lydia spun around, startled. Her eyes widened. Maybe from fear, maybe something else. I didn't answer him. I walked past the coat rack, into the kitchen, and dropped the folder on the table between us. The photo, the invoices, the account history. "You've been paying Noah all these years? Why?" Wade didn't look at the folder. His jaw tightened. For the first time since I was a kid, I saw his hands tremble. He sat down slowly. His voice was rough when he spoke. "Because he's the only thing keeping us alive." "What?" "You heard me." I pulled out a chair, but I didn't sit. Wade exhaled long and hard, the kind of breath a man lets out when he's tired of lying. "After your father died," he began, "I made some deals, the kind of deals people like your father used to say no to, and I didn't have his name to protect me anymore. Just debt, and a smile that didn't mean anything." Lydia stood frozen, her hand to her mouth. Wade continued. "Victor Hale, he's not the kind of man who sends invoices. He sends warnings. Noah figured it out. He confronted me, said he'd take the fall, disappear. Told me if I played it right, Hale would leave the rest of us alone." I stared at him. "And you let him do that?" "No," Wade said softly. I begged him not to. But Noah, he knew I didn't have the spine to face what I'd done. The kitchen was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. "So you paid Noah's debts? In secret?" I asked. "I wired him money through company accounts, kept his business floating, not out of guilt, though maybe I should have felt more of that. I did it because the people watching, they don't just go after one man. They go after wives, sons, stepsons." I looked at Lydia. Her eyes were wet, and her lips trembled, but she said nothing. "You think I threw you out because you were a disappointment?" Wade said. "I threw you out because they were watching, and you didn't know how to keep your head down. You'd ask questions, knock on doors, you'd dig." He stood now, slow, like every word had aged him a decade. "If you had stayed, they would have found you. And once they did, they'd never let you go." Lydia sank into a chair. Her voice was barely audible. "Why didn't you tell us?" Wade looked at her, then at me. "Because sometimes the truth gets people killed faster than lies." I didn't realize how hard I was gripping the back of the chair until I felt the wood splinter slightly under my fingers. The man I'd hated. He wasn't just a coward. He was a prisoner. And my brother, the one I thought had abandoned us. He'd been protecting all of us, paying off a debt that wasn't his. "The truth didn't set us free," I said, more to myself than to either of them. "It just told me who built the cage." Wade stepped toward the front door, turned the deadbolt with a heavy click. For the first time, he didn't lock it to keep me out. He locked it to keep someone else from getting in. I understood then. This house, with its clean windows and hollow rooms, wasn't home. It hadn't been for years. It was glass, see-through, fragile, dangerous. I turned to leave, but Lydia grabbed my sleeve. "I didn't know," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't know what he was doing for us." "I believe you," I said quietly, and I meant it. But that didn't mean the danger was gone. If Wade was right, and Victor Hale's people were still out there, then finding Noah wasn't just about answers anymore. It was about survival. And I wasn't the only one searching. If what he said was true, my brother didn't run away. He was running for all of us. That truth hit me harder than any punch Wade ever threw, and heavier than all the years I spent believing I'd been abandoned. I stepped outside to breathe, needed air that didn't reek of guilt and secrets. The cold bit into my skin, but it felt clean, honest. Unlike the walls behind me, snow had started again, soft flurries twisting in the wind, settling quiet on the hood of my car. I leaned against the driver's side door, exhaling steam, trying to string together what Wade had just confessed. That's when the first bullet tore through the mailbox. I dropped instantly, belly to the driveway. Another shot cracked glass somewhere behind me. Bits of metal and wood sprayed my back. Fear didn't crash over me. It climbed slow, cold, deliberate, like fingers pressing into the back of my neck. Headlights flashed up the road. A black SUV swerved toward the gate, tires screeching over gravel. I didn't wait to see who was inside. I scrambled back toward the porch, shouting, "Wade! Lydia! Down!" Another shot rang out. The front window exploded above me. I threw my shoulder into the door, stumbled into the kitchen just as Wade appeared from the hallway, revolver already in hand. "They're not here for you this time," he said, calm like someone who'd been waiting. Glass rained from the back window. Lydia screamed. Wade barked, "Get her out! Back door!" Before I could move, another blast. Wade jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, but he stayed upright, raised the revolver, and fired through the broken window. A muffled grunt followed. One of them went down. I dropped to my knees beside him. "We've got to go now." "No," he grunted. "You do." He shoved something into my hand, small cold metal, a flash drive. "Everything you need," he rasped. "Money trail, names, dates, Victor Hale, all of it. Find your brother. Finish what I couldn't." The kitchen lights flickered. Then darkness swallowed us whole. From outside, footsteps, 3, maybe 4 men. Close. I helped Wade lean against the wall, but he pushed me away. "Take her," he said. "Go." "No," I whispered. He looked at me for a long second, then cracked a sad, bloodied smile. "I didn't throw you out because I hated you, Ronan. I did it so they wouldn't put a bullet where your future was supposed to be." That broke something in me I didn't know was still whole. Then another shot. Wade slumped. I don't even know where it hit. Just that he slid down the wall, eyes still open, still watching the door. Lydia's hand found mine in the dark. She was shaking so bad I could feel it in my teeth. We slipped out through the back. The storm had picked up. Snow came in sideways now, stinging my cheeks. I held the revolver in one hand, the flash drive tight in the other. We reached the old blue sedan. It was already running. The GPS screen lit up on its own, glowing through the storm. Blur. Recalculating route, destination, home. I stared at the screen. My breath fogged the glass. That word again. Home. Like some cruel joke. Lydia, crumpled in the passenger seat, sobbed. Where is it taking us now? I gripped the wheel. To the only person who might still be alive. We pulled away just as more headlights approached from the rear. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. I already knew what I'd see. The snow turning dark where Wade had fallen. He wasn't my father. But that night, he died like one. And whether it was guilt or duty dragging me forward, I didn't care anymore. Someone had to end this. Someone had to make it mean something. The flash drive slid on the console with every turn. The wind howled through the cracks in the windows, and the GPS guided us north. The snow hid his body before the sirens even reached the hill. We didn't talk for the next 3 hours. Lydia sat beside me in the passenger seat, still wearing Wade's coat, a size too big, sleeves hanging over her hands. She hadn't stopped trembling, though whether from shock or grief, I couldn't tell. I just kept driving, north. By the time the sun pushed past the tree line, we were deep into northern Idaho. The mountains thinned out, then thickened again. Pines lined both sides of the road like soldiers in silent watch. The GPS hadn't said a word since we left Cheyenne, until now. A soft ding. Then the screen lit up, white text against black. You've reached home. I pulled onto a gravel path barely wide enough for the car, tires crunching ice. Ahead, a cabin crouched by a frozen lake. Smoke drifted from its chimney like a thread unraveling into the pale sky. The scent hit me before the memories. Pine and burnt wood. The same as that night by the fire. I stepped out, boots sinking into packed snow. Lydia stayed in the car, head resting against the window. I climbed the steps slowly, knocked once. From inside, a voice, quiet, worn, replied, "Took you long enough?" The door creaked open, and there he was, Noah. His beard was thicker now, flecked with gray, his frame thinner. But the eyes? Same steel blue, I remembered. Only now they held more than distance. They held the kind of exhaustion only truth can give. "You're alive," I said. Noah stared at me for a long beat before stepping aside. "Come in before she freezes." Inside it was warm, not cozy. Just warm enough. A fire crackled low in the stone hearth. Papers covered every flat surface. Receipts, bank records, maps, photos. I spotted Wade's name on more than one. Victor Hale's, too. Noah poured coffee without asking, handed me a chipped mug. He hadn't said a word since I stepped through the door. "You were supposed to be dead," I finally said. He sighed, sat across from me. "I never left, not really." "What the hell does that mean?" He gestured to the papers. After Dad died, Wade got in too deep with Hale. Money laundering, contractor fronts. I caught it before it blew wide. We made a deal. I took the blame. Disappeared. Kept Hale thinking I was the liability. Not Wade. Not you. I looked at him, trying to find the brother I thought I'd lost. "So Wade let me believe you were a coward?" "He let you believe what you needed to stay out of it." I stood, pacing. "You let me hate him for years. I could have helped. We could have fought back." Noah shook his head. "Better you hate a man than become one." I slammed the flash drive on the table. It skidded across, stopping near his hand. "He died for this. Tell me it's not just another lie." Noah picked it up slowly, plugged it into a battered laptop. Files flickered open. Spreadsheets, surveillance footage, wire transfers, offshore accounts, tied to Hale, payments made from Wade's company in Noah's name. "Every dollar," Noah said, voice cracking, "was a shield. He didn't protect his legacy. He protected us. He looked up. I labeled that GPS destination years ago. Home. I knew you'd come when you had nothing left to believe. I sat. Couldn't stand anymore. Noah kept talking, but the words came muffled, like I was underwater. All I saw were the years lost, the rage wasted. The man I hated had died keeping me clean. Just before dawn, headlights cut through the trees. They found us, Noah said, calm as he stood. He handed me Wade's revolver, cleaned, loaded, then turned to the desk, started the upload of every file. They won't stop, I said. No, he agreed, but they'll slow down. Footsteps. Then the door burst open. Chaos. Gunshots cracked through the wood. I fired first. Noah took one in the side but didn't fall. He yanked the hard drive from the laptop, shoved it into a steel case, and kicked it toward me. Go! He yelled, just as another round caught his shoulder. I grabbed him, dragged him out the back while fire spread behind us. Papers, wood, everything igniting. We collapsed by the lake, his blood already freezing against the snow. He coughed, barely audible. He built a home out of hiding, he said. You turn it into a promise. I wanted to tell him everything, that I was sorry, that I missed him, that I finally understood. But there wasn't time. I looked down at the GPS screen one last time. Route complete. Then it went dark. The cabin smoldered behind us. The snow, already thinning with the shift of seasons, turned to gray slush underfoot as emergency crews swept in. But by then, the damage was done. The truth had been sent, and the last person who knew how deep it went was gone. 3 weeks passed. Now I sat alone in a small courthouse room in Boise, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence between questions. My hands were still bandaged, one from the glass, the other from the cold. Across from me sat a man in a wrinkled shirt and weary eyes, not much older than me, just worn down in a different way. You're telling me, the detective said, leaning forward, your stepfather was laundering money with Victor Hale. Your brother faked his death to protect the family, and now both of them are gone? I nodded once. No, sir. They're not gone. They're just done running. He stared at me for a long moment, then exhaled and pushed a paper cup across the table. The coffee inside was cheap, burnt, but warm. You're free to go, he muttered. The files you uploaded blew the entire operation wide open. You've done more good in 3 weeks than our office did in 3 years. I didn't answer, just took the coffee and stood. Outside, the clouds hung low over Boise. Patches of ice clung to the curb. Cars passed slowly, tires slicing through slush. It was almost spring, but not quite. 2 days later, I drove back to Cheyenne. Lydia met me at the cemetery gates. She wore a red scarf, the same one she used to wear when Wade would forget his coat and she'd wrap it around his neck, grumbling that men never learned. She didn't say much. We didn't need to. There were 2 graves now, side by side, simple stones, no long eulogies or hollow platitudes, just names, dates, and silence. She placed a small pine cone on Noah's marker. I slipped the old car keychain between both stones, the one with the faded motel logo and the chipped silver edge. They're together, she said quietly. I nodded. They always were. We just didn't know it. She looked at me, her voice softer. You were right about him, about both of them. I shook my head. I wasn't right. I was just angry. The wind picked up, but it didn't cut the same way it used to. It just moved through us, like something passing instead of something pressing. After she left, I sat in the car for a long time, not starting it. just watching the cemetery gates close slowly behind her. When I finally turned the key, the GPS, silent since the fire, flickered once. Static crackled across the screen. Then, just as faint as a whisper, "New route available. Do you want to go home?" I stared at it, smiled, tired but honest. "I already did," I whispered. The screen went black. For good this time. Weeks turned into months. I never went back to Chicago. Never restarted the old job or tried to rebuild the version of life I'd abandoned long before the truth found me. Instead, I stayed in Idaho. A local youth center was short on volunteers. They needed someone to teach basic mechanics and run the darkroom. I told them I knew enough to be useful. Most days, I show the boys how to frame a shot or change a filter. Sometimes we talk about timing belts and torque wrenches. Other times, we don't talk at all. Some of them haven't had a man stick around long enough to hear their silence. One of them, a wiry kid with oil-stained knuckles and too much weight behind his eyes, pointed at my car the other day and asked, "Why do you still drive that old thing?" I looked out at it. The dented hood, the cracked mirror, the chipped paint along the doors, and smiled. Because it remembers where I came from. And maybe that's enough. They say closure looks like a door finally shutting. But for me, it looked like one opening. Not to somewhere new, but to what had been waiting all along. Not an address, not even a person. Just truth. Raw and flawed and necessary. That night, I walked to the edge of the lake outside town. Not for answers, just for air. The water had started to thaw. Reflections shimmered against the ice. I could still hear Noah's voice in my head, like a note left in a room only I could hear. Some people come home to rest. Others come home to finish what was started. I'd done both. Now, when I talk to the camera, telling these stories to whoever's willing to listen online, I end with the same question. Have you ever followed something that made no sense, but led you somewhere you needed to be? Tell me. I read every one. And if no one writes, that's okay too. Because for the first time in my life, home wasn't a place on a map. It was peace I carried with me.